My Harvard MBA daughter-in-law was slowly killing me for $50 million. That's not a headline from a magazine, it's my life. I'm Richard Evans, founder of Quantum Mind AI, and for 3 months I was dying slowly without even realizing it. What looked like grief, what looked like exhaustion after losing my wife Helen, was actually a carefully engineered betrayal inside my own home. Family drama, revenge story, betrayal, hidden truth. Justice served, all of it played out under my roof. If you're watching this, I want you to listen closely, because nothing shakes you more than realizing the person smiling at your breakfast table is secretly planning your destruction. Helen and I built everything together. For 30 years, she was my partner, my compass, the heart of our family. When cancer took her over, 300 people came to her funeral. But when the flowers faded and the guests left, the silence in my house was unbearable. That silence was the opening Olivia Carter Evans needed. My daughter-in-law, with her Harvard MBA, her perfect smile, and her carefully curated sympathy, moved into my guest wing to help. "Dad, you shouldn't be alone right now," she said, her arms full of designer luggage. To the outside world, she looked like the definition of family loyalty. To me, in my grief, she looked like a lifeline. But grief clouds judgment. I didn't see the red flags. Nathan, my son, was always traveling another client emergency in another city. That left Olivia and me alone in a mansion that suddenly felt too big, too empty. She filled the silence with warm coffee, gentle questions, and an endless stream of reassurance. This is what family does. And in my broken state, I wanted to believe her. What I didn't know was that every cup, every pill box, every sympathetic smile was part of a script she had written long before Helen's coffin touched the ground. Quantum Mind AI was worth $50 million contracts with Apple and Google, a Series C company poised to scale even higher. I thought I was protecting it by keeping control, by holding 51% of the voting shares. Helen and I had mortgaged our house twice, survived on ramen noodles, built this empire line by line of code. That empire became Olivia's target. She played the role of caring daughter-in-law so flawlessly that even I believed it at first. But beneath every smile was calculation. Beneath every "how are you feeling today?" Dad, was the subtle tightening of a noose. This is not just a family drama. It's the kind of betrayal that turns blood into poison, the kind of story you think only happens in movies until it happens to you. Stay with me, because what started as sympathy would soon spiral into attempted murder, corporate theft, and the night Silicon Valley's elite watched the truth explode in a ballroom. I should have noticed the betrayal earlier, but betrayal never announces itself with flashing lights. It comes disguised as kindness, hidden inside the gestures you most want to believe are real. Olivia Carter Evans. My Harvard-educated daughter-in-law played her role with perfection. She told anyone who would listen that she was only worried about me only stepping in to keep things from falling apart after Helen died. But behind every cup of coffee she set in front of me, behind every pill she placed neatly into the organizer on my kitchen counter, was the silent push of a plan to erase me. It started with small lapses, moments so ordinary I brushed them off. One Tuesday morning in the middle of a board meeting, I stared at the quarterly revenue numbers, and the digits refused to line up in my head. Olivia leaned toward Daniel Brooks, my partner of 3 decades, and whispered words I wasn't supposed to hear. "Richard seems tired. Maybe I should handle the review." I had built Quantum Mind AI from a garage startup into a $50 million company trusted by Apple and Google, and yet suddenly I was the man fumbling over the basics. 2 weeks later, it happened again, this time in front of Tesla's procurement team on a video call. I opened my mouth to present specifications I'd repeated 100 times before, and the words just slipped away. Silence hung heavy across the call. Olivia was right there, sliding into the empty space. "Why don't you let me take this one? You've been under so much stress since Helen passed." She delivered the pitch smoothly while her hand rested lightly on my shoulder. To Tesla, it looked like teamwork. To me, it felt like my voice being stolen. The symptoms grew sharper. Some mornings I woke up so groggy I could barely write my own signature. My handwriting, once steady enough to sketch algorithms in the margins of napkins, now shook across the page like I was decades older. Late in the afternoons, my speech began to slur, just enough for people to notice. And always Olivia was there, documenting every slip, every pause, every stutter, making sure the narrative of my decline spread quietly but efficiently. "I'm worried about you, Dad," she would say in her practiced tone of concern. These memory issues, the confusion, it might be more than grief. Dr. Emily Clark mentioned stress can mimic cognitive decline. Let me help you. She introduced the medication routine as though it were nothing more than vitamins. Omega-3 for brain health, B-complex for energy, melatonin for sleep. The labels were in her precise handwriting, the dosages listed on the refrigerator chart she updated daily. What kind of family takes over your medication schedule without asking? What kind of family insists on handling your doctor appointments, then begins whispering about dementia behind your back? I wanted to believe her because believing meant I wasn't alone. But believing also meant letting her guide me toward the edge of a cliff I couldn't yet see. The cruel genius of her scheme was how seamlessly she wrapped control inside love. She didn't demand power, she offered comfort. She didn't argue for my removal, she staged evidence of my decline. Every morning she asked the same question. How are you feeling today? Dad, any better? Her smile was flawless, her concern apparently genuine. Yet on the days I forgot to take the morning pills, I felt sharper, stronger myself again. On the days I swallowed what she handed me, the fog returned thick and heavy. By the third month, Olivia had moved beyond subtle influence. She positioned her office next to mine, attended meetings I was too exhausted to join, made decisions worth millions without waiting for my input. Colleagues began treating her as the natural heir. She spoke in measured tones about the stress Richard has been under the burden of leadership after such personal loss. To them, she looked like a devoted family member stepping in to help. To me, she looked like the executioner sharpening her blade. I overheard her one afternoon through the thin walls of my home office speaking to Daniel Brooks. The confusion, the motor issues, it could be early onset dementia. Maybe it runs in his family. My father had lived to 94 with his memory intact. Olivia knew that, but she also knew how to plant doubt. She was building a case brick by brick, a dossier that would one day declare me incompetent. Missed meetings, delayed decisions, groggy presentations, all carefully attributed to an illness she was manufacturing with her own hand. And while she orchestrated my decline, she positioned herself for the throne. As vice president of strategy, she already earned $280,000 a year. With Nathan gone on endless business trips, she was effectively running the house and the company. Her Harvard MBA opened doors, but my supposed dementia held them open wide. She wasn't just my daughter-in-law anymore. She was slowly becoming my replacement. Family drama, betrayal story, revenge story. These are phrases you usually find in headlines or podcasts, not in your own life. Yet there I was, sitting in my living room, sipping coffee laced with chemicals, watching the company. Helen and I sacrificed everything for slip quietly into the hands of a woman I once trusted. This was no ordinary corporate scandal. This was war disguised as compassion, a coup staged in my own home by someone who called me dad. It's strange how affection can feel like a weapon when you start to doubt the person giving it. Olivia Carter Evans wrapped me in so much attention that outsiders saw nothing but devotion. She hovered in doorways with warm smiles, brought me trays of food when I worked late, and filled the house with the sound of her voice so it would never feel empty after Helen was gone. But every act of kindness had an edge. Every gesture of care carried the weight of control. She played the part of the dutiful daughter-in-law so perfectly that even our friends praised her. "Richard, you're lucky to have Olivia," they would say, patting my back. Most people would give anything for that kind of family support. I nodded, smiled, pretended to agree. Inside, I felt a growing unease I couldn't quite name. When someone hugs you too tightly, sometimes it's not love, it's a cage. Nathan's constant absence only made her performance more believable. He called occasionally from airports, apologizing for the endless client emergencies that dragged him across the country. Dad, Olivia insisted I shouldn't worry. "She said she's taking care of you," he told me once, his voice thick with gratitude. That sentence landed like a stone in my stomach. She wasn't taking care of me. She was absorbing me bit by bit till there was no clear line between what was mine and what was hers. The mask of tenderness grew suffocating. Every morning she brewed coffee just the way Helen used to, except the taste was slightly off, a bitterness I couldn't explain. She left little notes in my office. "Don't forget to rest, Dad." She decorated the guest wing with family photos and candles, creating an image of permanence that no one dared question. When I tried to push back, she leaned in harder. "You're not a burden," she would whisper, her hand squeezing mine. This is what family does. And yet every day I felt lonelier in my own home. Helen's laughter no longer echoed in the halls, and Nathan's absence turned the dining room table into a place of silence. Olivia filled that silence with calculated warmth, but warmth without truth is colder than ice. There were nights I sat alone in my study, staring at the pill organizer she prepared, wondering if I was paranoid or simply grieving. If I swallowed her routine, the fog came. If I skipped it, clarity returned. The realization terrified me. The deeper she leaned into affection, the more she blurred the line between help and possession. She canceled my appointments to give me rest, rescheduled meetings with herself as the primary contact, and whispered to colleagues that I needed time to heal. Every word was coded in sympathy, every decision framed as protection. And yet beneath the veneer of love was the steady erosion of my authority. At family gatherings, Olivia held court like a queen cloaked in humility. She served dishes with a smile, spoke of my supposed brilliance, and then gently hinted at my struggles. "Dad gets tired sometimes," she'd say to guests, laughing softly. "But we're managing as a family." People nodded, charmed by her balance of reverence and responsibility. I sat there surrounded by laughter, feeling like a ghost at my own table. Doubt became my constant companion. Was I imagining the slurred speech? Were the trembling hands simply age catching up to me? Or was I being led step by step into a narrative Olivia had designed from the start? Her affection was relentless, and that was the trap. Who could accuse someone of betrayal when they were smiling, cooking, and pouring your wine with such grace? It reminded me of Helen in painful ways. My late wife had cared for me with genuine tenderness, not calculation. Helen's love was light, easy, full of laughter. Olivia's was heavy, pressing, always accompanied by subtle reminders of my supposed fragility. The contrast was unbearable. Some nights I whispered Helen's name into the dark, asking her for clarity, for guidance. Instead, I only heard Olivia's footsteps outside my door, checking if I'd taken my pills. This was family drama at its most insidious, a betrayal story wrapped in silk and smiles. Olivia turned my home into a theater where she played the lead role of devoted daughter-in-law. To everyone watching, I was blessed. To me, I was cornered. And yet the more she pushed her affection, the more my suspicion sharpened. There's a saying, when something feels too perfect, it usually is. Olivia's care was flawless, her timing impeccable, her sympathy bottomless. But love doesn't suffocate. Love doesn't erase your voice. Love doesn't slowly dismantle your life's work under the guise of protection. That wasn't family, it was a prison built out of hugs and whispered reassurances. In those moments of forced tenderness, I began to see the truth. She wasn't caring for me, she was staging me. Every kind word, every meal, every soft glance was a prop in her carefully written play. And if I didn't act soon, I wouldn't just lose my company, I would lose myself. Grief is a strange companion. Some nights it sits silently beside you, letting you breathe in the memory of love. Other nights it claws at you, leaving you gasping in the dark. After Helen's death, I lived with both versions. I would close my eyes and see her smile, the way she laughed when I burned our first attempt at homemade pizza, the way she stayed up until 2 a.m, balancing our books while I scribbled code on legal pads. Helen wasn't just my wife, she was the architect of our survival. We built quantum mind AI the way other couples build houses. Nail by nail, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. We mortgaged our home twice. We ate ramen noodles until it became a joke we told friends, the taste of innovation. While I worked 16-hour days refining algorithms, Helen managed investor calls, scheduled meetings, soothed my doubts when rejection letters piled up. Every contract we landed, every patent filed, bore her fingerprints as much as mine. To the outside world, I was the visionary. In truth, I was only half the equation. Helen was the steady heartbeat that kept the company alive. Remembering those years kept me grounded when Olivia's shadow loomed larger by the day. Because every time she whispered that I was slipping, that grief had clouded me, I remembered Helen's voice telling me, "Richard, you don't give up when the world doubts you. You prove them wrong." But it wasn't just Helen's memory that haunted me. It was the clarity that came in unpredictable bursts. On mornings when I forgot to take Olivia's carefully labeled pills, my mind snapped back into focus. Numbers flowed like water again, my recall sharpened, the fog lifted. That was the first crack in her illusion. Was grief really selective enough to disappear on skipped doses? Or was I swallowing something designed not to heal me, but to dismantle me? The suspicion gnawed at me, but guilt gnawed harder. Helen had trusted Olivia. She used to say Olivia's smart Richard. She'll keep Nathan grounded. I wanted to believe that legacy of trust wasn't misplaced. But trust is fragile and grief makes it easy to manipulate. I replayed every moment in my head, the soft hand on my shoulder, during board calls, the notes on the refrigerator, the way she corrected my answers with the tone of someone protecting me. Protecting or replacing family drama often hides in the quiet spaces, not in the explosions. My explosion hadn't happened yet. Instead, I was living inside the quiet erosion of my identity. I started journaling again, something I hadn't done since the early garage days. Late at night, when the house was finally still, I wrote down every symptom, every slip, every time I took the pills, versus every time I forgot. Patterns emerged. On skipped days sharp. On medicated days lost. The notebook didn't lie even when my mind tried to rationalize. Helen would have noticed faster. She had always been the skeptic, the one to double-check invoices, to question numbers that didn't align. I thought of her when I saw Olivia hovering with too much eagerness. I thought of her when I watched Olivia log into calls that once belonged to me. And I thought of her when Nathan's voice grew more distant with every trip, every excuse. Helen would have said Richard patterns tell the story. Stop ignoring them. So I watched, I listened. And I remembered our first investor pitch at a shabby conference room in Palo Alto. Helen whispering before I walked in, "You know this better than anyone. Don't let them see your fear." The day we finally secured a contract with Apple, Helen standing in our kitchen crying tears of relief because the mortgage payment was guaranteed. The night we celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary with takeout Chinese, because we couldn't afford anything else, but we toasted with sparkling water and called it champagne. Those memories were my anchor. They reminded me who I was before the fog, and they made Olivia's affection feel counterfeit. Genuine love uplifts. Helen's care always made me stronger. Olivia's care left me weaker. It was in the contrast that the truth crystallized. She wasn't supporting me. She was scripting me. Betrayal story, hidden truth, justice served. These are words you see in viral headlines, but when they live inside your chest, they're heavier than steel. I sat in my office one evening staring at Helen's framed photograph. Her eyes seemed to ask me the question I was afraid to answer. Are you going to let her finish what she started? That night I didn't take the pills. By morning my clarity was undeniable. I answered emails, I reviewed contracts, I even outlined a new algorithm with a steady hand. For a few hours I was myself again, and in that clarity came a chilling realization. Olivia's love was the mask. The pills were the dagger. I knew then that Helen's greatest gift to me wasn't the company we built or the sacrifices we shared. It was the voice she left behind in my memory, reminding me that truth has patterns, and courage means following them, no matter how painful. Olivia thought she was dismantling me piece by piece. Instead, she was waking the part of me that refuses to surrender. The turning point came on an ordinary Tuesday morning at Le Bernardin in San Francisco. I had chosen the restaurant for a potential Series D investor lunch, quiet, prestigious, a place where details mattered. That's where Sofia Ramirez, a veteran server I'd seen work flawlessly for over 2 decades, slipped me a folded napkin as she refilled my water. "Read this in private, Mr. Evans," she whispered. "I've been watching." Inside, written in quick, neat script, were the words that made my blood run cold. "Your daughter-in-law puts something in your drink every time you're here. Today she did it again while you were in the bathroom. I switched your glasses. Be careful." For a moment, the room blurred around me. Olivia sat across the table, dazzling a trio of venture capitalists, with her Harvard Polish reciting technical details she'd gleaned from years of shadowing me. She looked like the future of the company, while I sat there as the past. And yet, thanks to Sophia, I finally knew the truth wasn't grief, it was poison. That night, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Dr. Emily Clark, our longtime family physician. "Emily, I need to ask something in confidence. Have you prescribed me anything besides vitamins?" Her pause said everything. "Richard, I haven't seen you in months." Olivia asked about memory supplements, but I only suggested fish oil. Nothing stronger. Nothing like what you're describing. The second call was to James Anderson, a private investigator Daniel Brooks had once recommended for corporate security. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but when I told him the situation, his answer was immediate. "When do you want me to start?" I said. "Tonight." From that moment on, the investigation became my secret lifeline. I pretended to stumble through meetings, let Olivia believe her plan was working, while James set up quiet surveillance. Cameras discreetly placed in my kitchen and office. Financial forensics launched on our accounts. Background checks cross-referenced with pharmacy records. Every thread Olivia thought was hidden was being pulled one by one. The results were staggering. Within 2 weeks, James had documented over $340,000 in unauthorized transfers money funneled into shell companies disguised as emergency upgrades, legal fees, and patent protections. Each transaction had been approved during meetings I supposedly missed due to confusion. She wasn't just poisoning me, she was bleeding the company dry. Meanwhile, Dr. Clark helped me collect physical evidence. I began pocketing the pills instead of swallowing them, slipping them into an envelope each day. At night, I labeled them carefully: white tablets, blue capsules, yellow ovals. After 3 months, I had enough to fill a small shoebox. Dr. Clark analyzed them discreetly, her expression darkening as the test came back. "These aren't supplements, Richard. Lorazepam, diphenhydramine, zolpidem. Combined, they'd mimic early dementia, confusion, motor issues, memory loss." The pieces locked into place. Olivia had been creating the very symptoms she used as proof of my decline. She was orchestrating a narrative so airtight that even my closest friends believed it. Daniel had pulled me aside once, eyes full of concern. "Richard, maybe it's time to let Olivia handle more. You've been under so much pressure." He meant well. He didn't know he was being played. The deeper James dug, the clearer Olivia's plan became. Emails drafted to psychiatrists and neurologists setting up consultations without my knowledge. Correspondence with lawyers about conservatorship proceedings. Meeting notes that referred to me as increasingly unstable. She was building a legal case to strip me of control just in time for the Series D funding that would dilute my shares below majority. And still every morning she came bearing coffee and a smile. "How are you today, Dad?" "Any better." Her voice was honey, her touch warm, but I knew the poison was in the cup. Sofia Ramirez became more than just a witness. She was a reminder of dignity. "People underestimate us service staff," she told me quietly after another meeting. "But we see everything. We notice what others ignore." She risked her job to warn me, and her courage lit a fire I hadn't felt in months. This wasn't just a betrayal story anymore. It was a chance for justice served. I stopped taking the pills entirely, letting James capture my return to clarity on video. Meetings where I was sharp, decisive, my memory intact. We compared those to recordings from days I followed Olivia's routine. The contrast was undeniable. With evidence in hand, we built a timeline: financial theft, pharmaceutical abuse, manipulation of perception. A case so detailed it would be impossible for her to deny. And yet I knew evidence alone wouldn't be enough. Olivia's genius wasn't just her MBA or her access, it was her mask. She wore the role of devoted daughter-in-law so convincingly that most people couldn't imagine her as anything else. If I wanted the truth to stick, I needed to tear that mask away in front of people who mattered. Investors, board members, the entire Silicon Valley ecosystem she craved approval from. This was no longer just survival. This was strategy. A revenge story written in silence, waiting for the perfect stage. The moment I unfolded Sofia Ramirez's napkin at Le Bernardin, my life split in two. Before I was the grieving widower, doubting his own mind. After I was a man staring directly at betrayal, wearing the mask of family. Your daughter-in-law puts something in your drink every time you're here. Today she did it again while you were in the bathroom. I switched your glasses. Be careful. That single note stripped away months of denial. I didn't react right away. I couldn't. Olivia sat across from me, dazzling 3 venture capitalists, with her knowledge of quantum mind AI's architecture. Her hand brushed mine as she slid a wine glass closer. "Try this vintage, Dad, it's extraordinary." Her smile was effortless, convincing. But now I knew the truth, the bitterness in my coffee, the fog in my head, the slurred words. It wasn't grief, it was poison. That night back in my study, I dialed Dr. Emily Clark. She had been our family physician for over 20 years, the one Helen trusted through every illness. Emily, answer me honestly. Have you prescribed me anything beyond basic vitamins? Her pause stretched heavy across the line. Richard, I haven't prescribed you anything. Olivia asked me about supplements, but all I ever mentioned was fish oil. Whatever you've been taking, it didn't come from me. The second call was harder. James Anderson, a private investigator, Daniel Brooks, once brought in for a corporate security scare, was not someone I ever imagined calling for family matters. But family matters had become survival. James, it's personal this time. My daughter-in-law is poisoning me. She's also bleeding money out of my company. I need surveillance financial forensics, and I need it tonight. His response was immediate. I'm on it. From then on, my home was no longer just a place of false comfort. It was a crime scene under quiet observation. James installed discrete cameras in the kitchen, in the dining room, and the study where Olivia often organized my schedule. Every angle was covered. Meanwhile, Dr. Clark helped me collect the pills. I slipped them into envelopes instead of swallowing them, each one labeled with the date and time. The pattern became undeniable. On days I swallowed Olivia's routine, I was sluggish, confused, sometimes unable to remember numbers I'd carried in my head for years. On days I skipped, clarity returned. It wasn't age. It wasn't grief. It was her. James dug deeper into the financial side. Within 2 weeks, he uncovered more than $340,000 in unauthorized transfers. The money had been routed into shell companies with names like Pacific Innovations, LLC, and Offshore Strategic Advisors. None existed 6 months prior. Each expense had been justified as urgent facility upgrades or legal protections. All approved during meetings I'd supposedly been too confused to attend. Family drama turned into corporate scandal. Olivia wasn't just dismantling me, she was looting the empire Helen and I had sacrificed for. Every sleepless night, coding, every ramen dinner, every mortgage payment gambled on innovation, it was being siphoned into accounts offshore. Dr. Clark's tests confirmed the pills contained lorazepam, diphenhydramine, zolpidem, prescription drugs never meant for me. Together, they mimicked dementia perfectly: confusion, motor issues, memory loss. Emily's voice trembled when she called with results. Richard, this combination could cause permanent damage in someone your age. She knew exactly what she was doing. Still, Olivia never broke character. Every morning she asked, "How are you feeling today, Dad?" Her voice was soft, her hand warm, her eyes full of concern. But I had learned to see past the performance. I noticed how she logged into my calls without hesitation, how she spoke over me in board meetings, how she slipped into the role of successor with seamless grace. The tenderness was camouflage. The poison was the truth. Sophia met me again quietly after a lunch service. I've seen people fake kindness before, but this is different. Be careful, Mr. Evans. She thinks no one notices. I clasped her hand. She had risked her job, maybe her safety, just to warn me. She was the kind of ally Helen would have admired, ordinary on the surface, extraordinary in courage. With James's surveillance footage, Dr. Clark's lab results, Sophia's eyewitness testimony, and my own journal documenting symptoms against skipped doses, the case was becoming airtight. We had bank records, pharmacy receipts, even Olivia's own emails scheduling consultations with neurologists behind my back. She wasn't preparing to help me. She was preparing to have me declared legally incompetent. And yet I kept playing my part. I stumbled in conversations, let her guide me through dinners, nodded when she suggested I rest instead of attending meetings. I had to make her believe the trap was still working. Because the only way to expose a betrayal story this meticulous was to let her stage it fully and then pull the curtain back at the perfect moment. This was no longer just about surviving Olivia's poison. This was about justice. This was about revenge. This was about proving that experience beats ambition and truth beats deception. The Tech for Tomorrow Gala at the Ritz-Carlton in Half Moon Bay was supposed to be a celebration of innovation, a night where the brightest minds of Silicon Valley raised millions for STEM education. For Olivia, it was supposed to be her coronation. She had rehearsed every smile, every handshake, every polished sentence. Dressed in a black Valentino gown, her Hermes bag tucked neatly at her side, she moved through the ballroom like royalty. To the 200 executives, investors, and journalists gathered beneath the chandeliers, she looked like the future of quantum mind AI. But I knew the truth, and tonight the mask would finally shatter. I wore the same navy Armani tuxedo Helen had chosen for me years before. To some, I looked tired, aged, the founder nearing the end of his reign. That illusion was intentional. I stumbled slightly during the cocktail hour, let my voice trail off mid-sentence. Let Olivia swoop in with her trademark concern. Dad's been under a lot of stress, but I'm here to help him, she told one investor. They nodded sympathetically. The stage was hers, or so she thought. When the program began, Olivia seized her moment. The MC's voice rang out, "Please welcome Olivia Carter-Evans, Vice President of Strategy at Quantum Mind AI." She approached the microphone with flawless confidence. Her Harvard training radiated through every gesture. She spoke of innovation, of personalized learning, of a $2 million philanthropic commitment I had never approved. She ended with a line that made my stomach turn. As Richard transitions into an advisory role, I am honored to continue building on his incredible legacy. The applause thundered. Cameras flashed. To the audience, it looked like a graceful succession. To me, it was the final act of her deception. Then the disruption began. Dr. Emily Clark entered the ballroom, not in evening wear, but in her white coat, flanked by James Anderson and Detective Karen Mitchell of the San Mateo Sheriff's Office. At their side was Sofia Ramirez, still in her catering uniform, holding a small velvet pouch. The room went quiet as people sensed drama. Phones came out. Recordings began. Family drama was about to become public spectacle. "Richard, we need to talk," Dr. Clark said loudly, her voice echoing in the hushed ballroom. Olivia froze the microphone still in her hand. "Dr. Clark, this is hardly the place," she began, but James Anderson cut in, his voice sharp. "Ladies and gentlemen, forgive the interruption, but we have evidence of a serious crime in progress." He opened a leather portfolio and laid documents on the table: bank records, surveillance stills, pharmacy reports. The nearest executives craned their necks to read. Dr. Clark raised a manila folder. "Blood tests taken this morning show that Richard Evans has been systematically administered lorazepam, diphenhydramine, and zolpidem, powerful drugs never prescribed to him. These substances explain his recent symptoms. They were not supplements, they were poisons." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Executives who knew the side effects of such drugs gasped. A reporter from Bloomberg began typing furiously. Olivia's face hardened. "This is absurd. Richard suffers from early-stage dementia. These delusions are part of his decline." But Sophia stepped forward, her voice steady. "That's not true. I've watched her put pills in his drinks for months. Tonight, she slipped them into his wine while he was in the restroom. These," she held up the velvet pouch, "were in her bag. Pills, droppers, even a syringe." Detective Mitchell opened the Hermes bag on the table. Inside were prescription bottles with Olivia's name, a mortar and pestle, small vials of liquid medication. The room gasped as camera flashes erupted. The hidden truth was no longer hidden. It was on display under the chandeliers. James pressed play on a recorder. Olivia's own voice filled the ballroom. "Maybe it's time to accept that your best days are behind you. You can't remember quarterly revenue numbers. When was the last time you contributed anything meaningful to Quantum Mind? Then my voice firm, I built that company from nothing. And finally, Olivia, again 20 years ago. Leadership changes. Maybe it's time to step aside." The recording continued, capturing her admissions about unauthorized transfers and her plan to have me declared incompetent. The silence was suffocating. Then Detective Mitchell's voice broke it. "Olivia Carter-Evans, you are under arrest for elder abuse, pharmaceutical fraud, and corporate embezzlement." Gasps swept the ballroom as handcuffs clicked around Olivia's wrists. The woman who had played the perfect daughter-in-law only hours earlier was now a criminal in front of Silicon Valley's elite. She turned toward me, her voice trembling with rage. "Richard, you'll regret this. The company needs strong leadership. You're finished without me." I met her eyes and said quietly for everyone to hear, "You're right, Olivia. I can't run this company forever, but I can damn sure make sure you never get the chance." The ballroom erupted, reporters shouting questions, executives whispering in disbelief, phones recording every second. The story of the night shifted instantly from philanthropy to betrayal, from innovation to scandal. Justice served live in front of 200 witnesses. Olivia was escorted out her gown, dragging against the carpet, her empire of lies collapsing with every step. And for the first time in months, even with poison still in my veins, I felt in control again. The morning after the Gala, Quantum Minds board convened an emergency session in the glass-walled conference room. I arrived early, my leather folder thick with documentation. My navy suit pressed my mind sharper than it had felt in months. For the first time in 3 long months, I walked into that room without the fog of poison, without the weight of Olivia's manipulation. This was my company, and I was ready to take it back. The board members filed in silently. Daniel Brooks, my partner of 30 years. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a neuroscientist from Stanford, 2 independent advisors, and 3 representatives from our investors. Their faces carried the unease of people who had witnessed scandal explode overnight. They didn't need to ask questions. The videos from the gala were already going viral. Still, Richard Hayes, our lead investor representative, leaned forward and said, "Richard, we need to hear it directly from you. What happened last night?" I opened the folder, laying out blood test results, pharmacy records, surveillance stills, and James Anderson's financial investigation. For the past 3 months, the symptoms you've observed, my confusion, my slurred speech, my missed meetings, were not the result of dementia. They were induced by prescription medications administered without my consent. I handed Dr. Walsh the lab results. Her eyes widened as she scanned the pages. "Richard, these dosages could have caused permanent neurological damage." Then I slid forward the bank statements. Over $340,000 has been siphoned from company accounts into shell corporations Olivia created. Each transfer was approved during meetings I supposedly missed due to illness. The silence was absolute. Daniel Brooks dropped his pen, his face pale with shame. "Richard, I thought you were slipping." I believed her. I nodded. That was the point. She fooled all of us. The vote came quickly. Within minutes, the board unanimously terminated Olivia Carter Evans from all positions, revoked her access credentials, and authorized civil proceedings to recover stolen funds. For the first time in weeks, I felt vindicated, not just for myself, but for Helen, whose sacrifices built this company. But the consequences rippled far beyond our conference room. By noon, every major tech outlet had the story. TechCrunch ran the headline, "Founder Poison Quantum Mind Betrayal Rocks Silicon Valley." Bloomberg focused on the financial side, $340,000 embezzled in corporate coup attempt. Olivia's mugshot spread across Twitter, TikTok, and LinkedIn within hours. Harvard Business School quietly deleted her from their alumni success page. The consulting firm where Nathan worked issued a public statement distancing themselves from her. Family drama had become corporate scandal. Hidden truth had become front-page news. The criminal charges came swiftly. Elder abuse carried up to 4 years in state prison. Pharmaceutical fraud added 3 more. Corporate embezzlement opened the door to federal charges. Olivia's lawyers floated plea bargains, but the evidence was overwhelming. James had recorded everything. Sofia Ramirez's testimony was airtight. Dr. Clark's lab results sealed the case. When Olivia stood before the judge, she tried to spin her motives. "I believed I was acting in the best interests of the company. My methods were inappropriate, but my intention was to preserve Richard Evans' legacy." The judge's reply was merciless. "You systematically poisoned an elderly man while stealing from his life's work. That is not preservation, that is predation." Olivia was sentenced to 2 years in state prison, 5 years probation, and ordered full restitution of the stolen funds. Nathan filed for divorce within the week. Their prenuptial agreement protected him financially, but the emotional damage was brutal. One night he sat across from me in my living room, his eyes hollow. "Dad, I knew Olivia was ambitious. But poisoning you, stealing from the company, I didn't see it." "I should have." I placed a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't know, Nathan. She kept you in the dark like everyone else. What matters is you're here now." Meanwhile, Quantum Mind began its recovery. Ironically, the scandal brought investors closer. Bayview Capital doubled down on their commitment, praising our decisive governance reforms. We instituted independent medical oversight for executives, mandatory financial audits, and stronger whistleblower protections. The betrayal that almost destroyed us ended up making us stronger. Sofia Ramirez became a symbol of courage. The Service Workers Union awarded her a medal for bravery. A GoFundMe campaign raised $60,000 for her children's college fund. She was promoted to catering manager, her story featured in company newsletters and national news segments. I just did what was right, she told reporters. Nobody should hurt elderly people, especially family. Dr. Clark became an advocate for better oversight of elder care, testifying before state legislators about the dangers of pharmaceutical abuse. Her face appeared on 60 Minutes describing my case as a cautionary tale. James Anderson's firm was inundated with corporate clients seeking protection against insider threats. And me, I was free again. I walked into meetings with a steady hand, outlined algorithms with a clear mind, and led our Series D funding round with confidence. The deal closed at $75 million. Investors told me privately, "Richard, your resilience is the reason we believe in this company. Justice served, revenge complete, legacy preserved." Olivia's empire of deception had collapsed in a single night, but the lessons she left behind would last a lifetime. Trust once broken demands vigilance. Family can be love or it can be betrayal. And sometimes the people society overlooks, like a waitress refilling water glasses, hold the courage to save an empire. When the trial ended and Olivia was led away in handcuffs, I expected to feel relief. Instead, I felt an emptiness I couldn't shake. Justice had been served, yes, but family wounds do not heal in courtrooms. For days afterward, my house echoed with silence again. Helen's absence felt sharper, and Nathan's absence was almost unbearable. But one evening, as the sun dropped low over the redwoods, I heard his car pull into the driveway. Nathan walked in with a heaviness I had never seen in my son. His shoulders slumped, his eyes bloodshot. He looked less like the polished consultant always rushing to an airport, and more like a boy who had just discovered the world was crueler than he imagined. He sat down across from me at the dining table, the same table where Helen once set steaming bowls of soup and filled the room with laughter. Now the silence between us was thicker than ever. "Dad," he said finally, his voice breaking, "I don't know how to apologize. I married a woman who poisoned you. I let her into this family. While she was destroying you, I was traveling for work, trusting her to take care of everything. I wasn't here when you needed me most." I studied him. This was the son Helen and I had raised, the man who had drifted so far that I barely recognized him in recent years. My instinct was to be angry, to remind him of the danger his blindness had allowed. But Helen's voice echoed in my mind. "Richard, anger builds walls. Forgiveness builds bridges." "Nathan," I said slowly, "you didn't know. She lied to everyone. She wanted you gone so she could operate in the shadows. The only mistake you made was believing her too much." He buried his face in his hands. "I should have protected you. Instead, I was absent, and she nearly destroyed everything you and Mom built." For the first time in years, I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. "You're here now. That's what matters. We can rebuild." That night didn't fix everything. Reconciliation never happens in a single conversation, but it opened the door. In the weeks that followed, Nathan began visiting more often. He showed up at board meetings, sitting quietly in the back learning. He asked me questions not just about company strategy, but about Helen's early role, about the sacrifices we made when he was a child, and we ate ramen to keep the lights on. He wanted to understand what he had almost lost. One Saturday, we drove together to Helen's grave. For years, Nathan had avoided the cemetery, saying it was too painful. But this time, he stood beside me, his hands shaking slightly as he laid fresh lilies at her headstone. He whispered, "I'll do better, Mom. I promise." Tears streaked his face. I didn't interrupt. Sometimes grief needs silence more than words. Back at the company, his presence shifted the energy. He stopped apologizing constantly and started contributing. He offered insight into client relations, suggested improvements in communication, and even caught small financial inconsistencies others missed. For the first time, I saw not just my son, but a partner in the making. Yet trust rebuilds slowly. There were moments when I still saw Olivia's shadow in his eyes. At family dinners, when he laughed too hard or reached for a glass of wine, I caught myself wondering if I could believe him again. But then he'd look at me with raw honesty, and I'd remember he was betrayed too. He had lost a wife, a future, the illusion of loyalty. His pain was different from mine, but just as real. Family drama leaves scars. Betrayal story leaves silence. But reconciliation offers something more powerful than revenge. It offers a chance to begin again. Nathan and I began taking long walks on weekends. We talked about everything: politics, technology, even sports. Sometimes we didn't talk at all, just walked side by side like we used to when he was a boy. Those moments were the quiet proof that healing was possible. One evening he asked me, "Dad, do you think Mom would forgive me for trusting Olivia?" I didn't hesitate. Helen's love was unconditional. She would forgive you instantly, but she'd also expect you to learn, to never make the same mistake twice. Nathan nodded, his jaw set. "Then that's what I'll do." For the first time since Helen's death, I felt hope bloom in the emptiness. The company had survived. Justice had been served. But the greatest victory was this: a father and son, once divided by lies, finding their way back through truth. This wasn't just a revenge story anymore. This was survival healing and the rediscovery of family. In the months that followed, Quantum Mind didn't just recover, it thrived. Investors who had nearly walked away during the chaos doubled down once they saw our reforms. Independent audits, transparent governance, and stronger protections became the new foundation. The scandal that almost killed us became the reason people trusted us again. But the real hero of this story wasn't me or the board, or even the investigators. It was Sofia Ramirez, the woman who quietly risked her livelihood to slip me a folded napkin and tell me the truth. Without her, Olivia's poison might have silenced me forever. The San Francisco Chamber of Commerce awarded her the Community Courage Medal, and national headlines called her the waitress who saved Silicon Valley's most important mind. She brushed off the spotlight with humility, saying, "I just did what was right." But I'll never forget that her simple act of bravery saved not only my life, but the company Helen and I built. Standing on the stage at our first post-scandal product launch, I felt Helen's presence again. I looked out at the team, at the journalists, at the new faces ready to carry our work forward. And I realized the truth this ordeal had burned into me. Dignity and courage exist at every level of society. It isn't about titles or wealth. It isn't about who owns the patents or who sits at the head of the boardroom. It's about the people who choose integrity when no one is watching. And maybe that's what you needed to hear today. That betrayal doesn't define you. That courage can rise from the unlikeliest places, even from someone pouring water at your table. If you've ever doubted your worth, if you've ever felt powerless against those who tried to control you, let my story remind you, power is never where people think it is. It lives in truth and resilience and in the quiet courage to act. Now I want to hear from you. What did this story spark inside you? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Save this video so you can return to its message when you need strength. And if you believe in stories that expose betrayal and celebrate justice, hit subscribe, because the next one might just change how you see your own life.